Hello YouTube and welcome back to another Dare to Game video. Today we're playing Red Dead Online and we're bringing you another weapon customization video, and today's is for the Carbine Repeater, or Carbine as a lot of people like to correct me. I'm from the Midwest, we say carbine up here, so don't feel the need to comment that down below, but I guess do whatever you want. So like always, we're going to have 5 custom designs for making this gun look as good as possible, or at least my 5 favorite designs that I've ever used, and I'll show you how to recreate each of those. But before we dive on in and start off with the first design, I'm going to give you a little bit of historical background information about the actual gun. So let's just do that. The Carbine Repeater in Red Dead Online is based on the real-life Spencer Model 1865 carbine. The Spencer repeating rifles and carbines were early American lever-action firearms invented by Christopher Spencer. The Spencer was the world's first military metallic cartridge repeating rifle, and over 200,000 examples were manufactured in the United States by the Spencer Repeating Rifle Company and Burnside Rifle Company between 1860 and 1869. The Spencer repeating rifle was adopted by the Union Army, especially by the cavalry during the American Civil War, but did not replace the standard issue muzzle-loading rifle muskets in use at the time. Among the early users was George Armstrong Custer. The Spencer carbine was a shorter and lighter version designed for the cavalry. The Spencer showed itself to be very reliable under combat conditions, with a sustainable rate of fire in excess of 20 rounds per minute, compared to the standard muzzleloaders with a rate of fire of 2 to 3 rounds per minute. This represented a significant tactical advantage. In the late 1860s, the Spencer Company was sold to the Fogarty Rifle Company and ultimately to Winchester. Many Spencer carbines were later sold as surplus to France when they were used during the Franco-Prussian War of 1870. Even though the Spencer Company went out of business in 1869, ammunition was manufactured in the United States into the 1920s. Later, many rifles and carbines were converted to centerfire, which could fire cartridges made from the centerfire 50-70 brass. The original archetype of rimfire ammunition can still be obtained on the specialty market. These guns were produced between 1860 and 1869, and in these years around 200,000 of them were manufactured. They cost about $40 in 1861 and had an effective range of 500 yards. Alrighty, so starting us off with our first design here, we've got a pretty unique looking one that I like to call the sun-dried tobacco. So this one is supposed to look a little bit more rugged and rustic, maybe older, and which makes sense because if we're playing at the time of this game, this gun would be a pretty old gun by now. So for this design, I included a scope on it because I just think it helps with the look of it. And then we did the plain cloth wrap. And then for our varnish on the gun, I used the birch varnish. For the cloth wrap, I used the tobacco color, which is where we get the name from. I did no carvings, no engravings, and then the metal I did just like this. So we've got brown steel for the barrel, the frame, and the lever, and then brass for the hammer, sight, and trigger. And so obviously I just like this subtle color combination. I think it looks very good together. And if we're going for that kind of, I mean, maybe like poor old farmer type of vibe for a gun, which, like I said, if you're using this gun in the year that this game is set, you'd probably have to be pretty poor, either that or someone who's just really set in their ways and fought in the Civil War. So I just think that this the style of this gun definitely fits that type of character. And the cloth wrap, I just really like how not bad it makes the gun look, but like if you were putting the wrap on it like that, you got to imagine maybe it's falling apart or something. So I really like the really rustic look of this design. So yeah, that's number 1, the sun-dried tobacco. If you're making a farmer type character or a poor guy or maybe a hobo who jumps on trains and stuff, this would probably be a good role-play gun for that. Maybe a homeless Civil War veteran would probably be the obvious choice. But that's the first design. Let's move on to the second design. Alright, so for design number 2, we have HARLOT-O'SCARA, and for this one, we're going to once again have the scope on it, and for our wrap, we're going to do the plain leather wrap. The varnish on this gun, you want to use the ebony varnish. Dark walnut would also work, but I think ebony looks a little bit better. For the color on our wrap, we're going to go obviously with scarlet, which is where we get our name, and then we're going to have full engraving. The design doesn't really matter. All that matters is that you have the red enamel inlay. Then for our colors, just solid black, so black barrel, frame, hammer, lever, sight, and trigger. And obviously what we're going for here is the black and red look, which is really classic. And I was a little skeptical when I first started off, because I always like having one of these because it's a color combination that a lot of people like. I was a little skeptical, but then when I got done with it, I was like, dang, that looks good. It might be the best way that I've ever found, other than my own personal favorite, which is, of course, predictable if you've watched any of these videos before, but dang, does it make the Carbine Repeater look a lot less basic. It makes it look very cool. So definitely a cool one, probably a little bit more edgelord or try-hard style than a lot of people like to go for, but honestly, I think it looks really good. So that's design number 2. Let's move on to design number 3. Alright, so for our third design, we have the silver tail, which I think looks pretty cool. This one's maybe a little bit more stock looking, but I think it looks real sharp. So for this one, we're going to take the wrap off, we're going to take the scope off, we want it to just look like a plain repeater. Then for our varnish, we're going to do mahogany varnish. Obviously, we don't have a wrap, so that's not a thing here. We're going to want to carve the eagle into the butt of the stock, and there's two options, but I like this one better. Then for our engravings, again, it doesn't super matter which one you pick. All that matters is that you put the nickel inlay on it, so it can contrast against the frame, the metal of the frame. Then for the metals, we're going to have nickel plating for the barrel, the hammer, the lever, and the trigger, and then blackened steel for the sight and the frame. And that gives it a really nice alternating contrasting appearance. I really like the way that the whole center frame area looks, because the lever carves out so much of it that you get a lot of that nickel contrast in there. Obviously we have the nickel inlay against that smooth blacked finish. I think it looks excellent. So this design is very cool. If you want a more basic repeater that doesn't have a scope or a wrap or anything like that on it, you want it to look a little bit more like a normal gun, I think this one works really well. And I would say this one is maybe another character who's going to be a little bit older because they're using a more out-of-date gun, but maybe a more wealthy one, like a store owner or a saloon guy, something like that, because it just fits for it. It's very fancy, very well maintained, but it is a very old gun. So yeah, I really like this design. I think it turned out excellent, and that is design number 3, the Silvertail. Let's move on to design number 4. Alright, so for design number 4, we have the Icebreaker. And now this one, I just had a lot of fun with this one, even though it looks pretty simple. I actually really like the way this one turned out. So we were going for a white theme. I wanted to make it as white as possible, but then when I did the myrtle varnish for the stock, it didn't look quite right, so I decided to instead go with the dark walnut. So for this one, again, we're not using a scope, or we do have a wrap. It's the regular cloth wrap, and we're going to do the white color for that. Like I just said, the best varnish I think you can go with is dark walnut. Ebony also works for basically the same effect. Like I said, I wish they had one that was like almost exactly white, because that would have been perfect, like a really, really light birch or something like that. But since they don't, and myrtle's the closest, and I didn't really like it, I think it's better to go with the dark wood contrasting. So no carvings, no engravings on it. If you were going to do engravings, make sure that they've got a silver metal inlay, because all of the metal we're doing on this one is silver. So the barrel, frame, hammer, lever, sight, and trigger should all be silver. Iron or nickel would also work. I just think silver looks better on this gun. This is one of the few guns where silver looks really, really good on it, because it has a much smoother appearance than on most guns. So for this one, basically what I'm kind of thinking is maybe a older mountain man or lady who lives up in the Coulter region, so there's just snow a lot of the time. So to kind of blend in, they go with the real white design. They got the white wrap around it to help that blend in with the snow a little bit better. And then the metal itself, I just like the role play of a lot of your stainless steel gun components, even though that would obviously be not a thing back then. They're designed specifically for wet and cold environments, so it makes sense that this would be a mountain man or woman's gun, especially an older one who, like I said, has a gun that's from far before the year that this game takes place in. Like I said, I really like this design. Obviously, all of the white contrasting against the dark stock looks excellent, and it does have a more basic design than a lot of other ones in the game. So even though I think it looks pretty cool and a little bit fancy and is great for a lot of roleplay, it's also a pretty basic design that would probably go with anything you want. So that's our 4th design, the Icebreaker. Let's move on to the 5th and final design. And of course, for the number 5 spot, we have the DTG Classic, which is just such a classic looking design. I love it so very much. So for this one, we're going to once again have a scope on it, and we're going to have another wrap on this one. This time it's going to be the cartridge wrap. Again, if you don't have the cartridge wrap, just use the regular leather wrap. That would work fine and would look almost the same. For the varnish on our stock, we of course have to go with the mesquite varnish, because it's my personal favorite varnish and just looks so good with this model. Then for our cartridge wrap, you're going to want to go with the brick red color for that. Then we're going to have full engraving. It doesn't really matter which one you go with, just so long as that it's blued steel on the inlay, so it'll contrast against our gold frame. No carvings other than that. And then for our metals, we're going to do it just like this. So blued steel for the barrel, the hammer, and the lever, and gold for the frame, the sight, and the trigger. As usual, our fancy design is going to cost us 18 gold bars, but doesn't it just look fantastic? I absolutely love this. Obviously, the gold is a little bit gaudy for some people's taste, but I think it contrasts rather well against the red of the mesquite varnish and the brick red wrap, and of course the blue of the barrel and the hammer and the lever. I love this color combination. I'm never going to stop loving it. It's probably always going to be my favorite. It just looks so good. good together. So that is all 5 of my designs for the Carbine Repeater. If you've got any comments, questions, concerns, maybe designs you like better for this gun or something like that, go down to the comment section and leave those there. But in any case, thanks a ton for watching, and have a nice day, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching another Dare to Game video. If you like this video, please leave a like and a comment. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you like my content and would like to support this channel, consider becoming a member today for as little as $1.99 a month. It makes a huge difference. But in any case, thanks for watching and have a nice day. I'll see you next time.